Hello, everyone. It's Alex Miller and Capnion here. I wanted to drill down pretty deep in a news item I saw circulating today about OpenAI hiring a CFO and a product chief, and why I think this is interesting. In the backdrop here is the reality that many of us have seen of business versus technical at a business can be a fault line on which people don't see eye to eye, don't get along. You can see at different businesses, it appears maybe one side of that table is a little bit more in control than the other. And I've seen a lot of tea leaves around OpenAI lately that technical is out and business is in. To tell this story well, I think it's worth doing a little recap. OpenAI started out as a not for profit research lab. And it seems like, by all accounts, there was one time where that was very impactful for them in being able to recruit top scientists, you might say, people that are very focused on advancing the state of the art of advanced neural net algorithms of various forms. I am tempted to say that, in my judgment, this was a key part of the story, that they were able to attract and retain better technical talent. You might note, I believe there was a long period of time early in OpenAI's history where Google DeepMind, which is just one part of Google doing AI stuff, had, the number I've seen is 7 or 8 times more budget than all of OpenAI had. And yet we arrived at a point where Google always seems like a little bit of a mess playing catch up. And OpenAI is sitting relatively pretty consistently delivering things that are on the cutting edge. There was something in the sauce that was impactful, whatever it was. And it's an interesting question to ask, well, what was it? And then, is it still there? I've discussed at length elsewhere that OpenAI is kind of a strange bird from a governance standpoint, a legal structure standpoint at this point, because they are now a not-for-profit with a for-profit subsidiary. That is kind of unusual, and there are reasons why prima facie it might be bad. It is one of many harbingers, certainly, that OpenAI used to have a more scientific orientation, and over time it has taken some very tangible steps to being a for-profit business and trying to deliver people products for money one way or another. So this brings me back to the original headline. I would just point out that there's been lots of headlines about OpenAI hiring all these people that don't do AI, and a CFO and a product executive are not people with technical expertise. They're people that, how should we package this AI thing in a way that people want to use and want to buy in some sense? And then a CFO is very much a pure business side character. Meanwhile, while I don't get a full HR report on everything that goes on at OpenAI, they've had some very high-profile departures of these scientists and engineers that were originally the whole reason AI existed in a way. And I don't see as many headlines about the really top technical and scientific talent is flocking to OpenAI. I see lots of bits and pieces about how it's leaving. And Ilya Sutskever, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, I mostly read about him in the news. he's a notable example where he is, by all accounts, a world-class scientist. He left recently. And he is one of the people that's famous enough to show up in the news. You might remember that he was on the board, and there was a very turbulent and somewhat unusual round of boardroom intrigue where Sam Altman, the CEO, almost got pushed out. This other fellow, the scientist, was somehow both one of the people that was specifically involved, was on the board, is specifically involved in pushing Altman out, and then somehow ended up 3 days later signed on to a letter about how Altman should come back. So that's a little weird. So it's not explicit, but it seems pretty obvious to me there was a bit of a fist fight there. And there's a lot of different stories about what might have defined the two sides, but it at least vaguely resembles something we're all a little bit familiar with, where there's the business side and there's the technical engineering side. And whatever the specific bone of contention is, it's often true that that is where the fault line is, whatever the reason. And now he's gone. He's a world-class scientist. He's gone, and high-powered finance and product executives are in. Closing thoughts. Usually in my videos, I'm a little bit more saying I know things and telling you what you should know. And in this one, I don't know. This is just something that's been going on. I wouldn't say I have a ton of the kind of confidence where I would predict that OpenAI's technical dominance and acumen are over. But there's definitely a pivot going on there at an important company, and a lot of important talent that got them there seems to be going other places. And I'll close this run-on sentence by saying maybe this is a harbinger of a more interesting, tangible story about more frightening, in the business sense, events that could come down the road. Some of these scientist guys are real sharp. They're real hard to find. They can be pretty important depending on what you're trying to do.